Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. We've got something pretty interesting today, looking at what one of the biggest names in filmmaking is lining up next. A real shift in gears, it seems.
That's right. We've been looking at this piece from Geek Tyrant, and it lays out James Cameron's plans for what comes right after the next Avatar movie.
Okay, so our mission here is pretty clear. Let's really unpack this project. What is it? Where does it fit in Cameron's, well, notoriously packed schedule? Who's making it with him?
And crucially, what does the source material itself, this new novel, tell us about the actual story? And, why is it getting people talking already?
Exactly. And just to be clear up front, we're sticking just to what this specific Geek Tyrant article tells us.
Yeah, and based purely on this, it's definitely a surprise move. We're looking at a big fantasy epic based on a completely new book from a pretty celebrated author in the grimdark scene.
And the premise sounds wild. Monsters, soldier priest. Not your usual fantasy setup.
Not at all. So let's jump in. The headline news from the sources: James Cameron's next film, confirmed, after Avatar. Fire and Ash is going to be an adaptation called The Devils.
The Devils, okay. That's big news, right? After being so deep in Pandora for so long.
Absolutely. And the article is very specific about the timing. It's definitely coming after Avatar. Fire and Ash, which, is supposedly hitting cinemas December 19th this year.
Right, but before, this is key, before those other two Avatar sequels, the ones planned for, 2029 and 2031.
Exactly. So he's carving out space for this. It's a proper detour from the novel.
Okay, so what is this detour? The source material is The Devils, and the article says it's a brand new fantasy novel.
Brand new, just hit the shelves last month, apparently. Published by Tor, and it's written by the British author Joe Abercrombie.
Wow, okay, so super fresh material. This isn't some classic he's been planning for decades.
Doesn't seem like it. And get this. The article makes it clear Cameron's not just, overseeing it as a producer. He's producing and co-writing the script.
Co-writing? With who?
With the author himself, Joe Abercrombie.
Oh, now that's interesting. A direct collaboration.
Yeah, and Abercrombie seems thrilled. There's a quote in the article where he says he can't think of anyone better to bring this weird and wonderful monster of a book to the screen.
That definitely suggests they're aiming for that huge Cameron scope, doesn't it? The visual power he brings.
Feels like it, yeah. Leveraging his strengths for Abercrombie's world.
Okay, let's talk about Abercrombie then. Because, as the article notes, he's not just some random author. He has a serious following, right?
Yeah.
Especially in that grim, dark fantasy niche.
Oh, absolutely. He's a big name there. His First Law series really made waves, kind of redefined things with those, morally gray characters, anti-heroes, that sharp, dark wit.
Right. The article mentions First Law and also his Age of Madness trilogy. So he's established.
Very much so. And Cameron's apparently been following his work. The article mentions Cameron praising Abercrombie's writing, saying he loves the books.
Does it say which ones?
Yeah, it mentions the whole First Law cycle, but specifically calls out Best Served Cold, which is set in that same world as a personal favorite of Cameron's.
Okay, so a longtime admirer. But why this book, The Devils, for the collaboration?
Well, Cameron apparently said it was the, quote, freshness of the world and the characters in The Devils that finally pushed him to get off his butt, as he put it, and actually team up with Abercrombie.
So The Devils specifically sparked this partnership. Interesting. All right, let's get into the premise then. What does the article actually tell us The Devils is about?
Okay, first thing. It kicks off a whole new trilogy. It's separate from the First Law world. Different premise entirely.
Got it. New world. What's it like?
The setting is described as a warped version of our own world, specifically Europe.
A warped Europe, okay. Sounds ominous. What's the threat?
This is where it gets pretty intense. The article says the world is crawling with unspeakable monsters. And then there's this detail. It's under siege by flesh-eating elves.
Hold on. Flesh-eating elves.
Yep, that's the phrase used. Flesh-eating elves.
Wow. Okay, that paints a picture.
It immediately signals, this is dark. Probably leaning into horror territory. Fits that grim dark label perfectly.
Seriously, flesh-eating elves. That's memorable. So who's the hero facing this nightmare?
The main character is introduced as a guy named Brother Diaz, described as a weary soldier priest.
It's a soldier priest. Okay, and what's his job?
His mission, according to the source, is basically to put together a team to fight back against all this monstrousness.
Right. Standard enough fantasy trope, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
Assemble the fellowship.
But here's the twist, maybe the biggest one. The team he's supposed to assemble, it's made up of both men and monsters.
Wait, say that again? Men and monsters on the same team.
That's what the article says. A team of men and monsters,
Oh.
led by the weary soldier priest.
Fighting flesh-eating elves in a warped Europe.
Exactly.
That is quite a premise that definitely stands out.
It really does. You can see why Cameron might have found that freshness compelling, right? It sounds like Abercrombie pushing things even further than maybe First Law did in terms of the core concept.
Yeah, more overtly strange, maybe, but still with that dark, gritty feel he's known for.
Seems like it. And, just as a side note for Abercrombie fans listening, the article does quickly mention this isn't his only project heading to the screen.
Oh, yeah. What else?
Remember Best Served Cold, the one Camel liked? That's also being adapted into a feature film.
Ah, interesting. Who's involved with that one?
Tim Miller is directing. He did Deadpool. And Rebecca Ferguson is set to star as Monza Mercado. It's apparently in pre-production right now.
Okay, so Abercrombie's work is definitely in demand in Hollywood right now.
But back to Cameron and the Devils. The article sort of speculates that if you combine Cameron's typical scale and visual power...
Which, yeah, you kind of expect with him.
Right. Combine that with the source material. The piece suggests it could be a great new chapter for both the director and modern fantasy cinema.
It's definitely interesting seeing Cameron pivot like this. Decades of sci-fi, Pandora. Now full-on dark fantasy. Warped world, monsters. This alliance idea.
It feels genuinely different for him, a departure from, the sort of ecological themes and visual beauty of Avatar, even though that had its dark moments. This sounds grimmer, bleaker maybe.
Oh, for sure. And for people who like that grimdark style, the idea of Cameron's technical wizardry applied to Abercrombie's specific brand of dark, weird storytelling. Oh, you can see the potential excitement there.
It does raise questions, though, doesn't it? Like, how will Cameron's approach, which often aims for a kind of visceral realism, even with fantastical elements, mesh with Abercrombie's cynicism and moral ambiguity?
Yeah, that's a fascinating point. It's not an obvious pairing in some ways, which maybe makes it more exciting. Less predictable.
Would be something really unique comes out of that friction,
Definitely feels like a creative risk, maybe, in a good way.
And hey, if you're curious and want to dive into this world before the movie potentially comes out years from now, the article reminds us the book The Devils is out now.
Right. Good point. Okay, let's wrap up the key points from this Geek Tyrant article then. James Cameron, his next film after Avatar, Fire and Ash. It's called The Devils.
It's based on a brand new grimdark fantasy novel by Joe Abercrombie. Just came out.
The setting is a messed up version of Europe, crawling with monsters, including...
Yes.
flesh-eating elves.
The hero, sort of, is Brother Diaz, a weary soldier priest. His task, build a team.
And this team is the kicker.
Oh.
It's made up of both humans and monsters fighting together.
And Cameron isn't just directing or producing from afar. He's actively co-writing the screenplay with Abercrombie. It's a deep collaboration.
So the potential feels huge. You've got this giant of cinema, known for spectacle, meeting a master of dark modern fantasy on a really, really weird and unique premise.
It really could shake things up, both for Cameron and for fantasy films in general. It feels unexpected.
Definitely. So here's something to think about based just on what this article told us. When you picture it, Cameron's visual style, Abercrombie's grimdark sensibility, and this specific setup, a weary soldier priest leading men and monsters against flesh-eating elves in a warped Europe. What does that actually look like in your head? What kind of feel do you imagine for a movie like The Devils?